What's going on, you guys? It's Ariel here. Welcome back to the Gamer's Respite. Thank you. I finally got it. I'm leaving this one in. Welcome to the podcast, Brian. I am so excited to have you back, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm extraordinarily tired. Just a forewarning right there. So you might get some weird answers from me, but yeah, doing great otherwise.
If he says that cats belong on the moon with a jar of pickles, then it's the sleepy's talking.
But if I say pineapple belongs on pizza, that is a deep-seated belief that I hold in my heart.
You see, this is the correct answer. Yes, exactly. Pineapple does belong on pizza. I mean, now the people know now. But I do have to say, welcome so much, friend. We are going to be talking about some really interesting topics. I'm so excited to talk about Nintendo stuff. We're going to talk about Game Informer. We're going to talk about a whole host of things. We're going to talk about the writing industry as a whole, which I've gotten some opinions from different people, from people at Rolling Stone to people who are just, in the industry trying to make an up and coming for themselves. So one thing I want to say before we get into anything, congratulations on the rebirthing, I want to say, of Game Informer. Massive congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we just passed a year, I guess like a month and a half ago.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
over a month ago. Yeah, we just passed the 1 year anniversary of our official relaunch. So it's been wild to have it come back because it just doesn't seem to ever really happen. It's like we just saw, unfortunately, Paste Games just got shuttered, and it's just like when you hear this terrible news of these outlets going away, it's just like that's what you kind of like resign yourself to. Is like, yeah, well, I'm just never gonna get to enjoy the work of that outlet anymore. So when I started getting the inkling that Game Informer might be coming back, it was like, oh wow, that seems unlikely, but yeah, let's ride this wave and see what happens. And then sure enough, like what felt like at one point a 1 in a million shot ended up actually coming to fruition.
Now, tell me the process of that, because I realize that there's a lot involved with making something like that even coming to fruition. So what was the process of getting Game Informer back on track and coming back to people?
Sure. So we were shut down August 2nd, 2024 by our previous parent company. And I had a few people reach out to me over like LinkedIn and like, hey, can you connect me to somebody about buying the brand? And I'm like, well, I don't really have any connections at the old company, but like I will pass you on to our editor-in-chief, Matt Miller, who, talked to more of the people that, might have something to do with that at our old company. And, I did that. And, a lot of people seemed like they were like, interested in exploring it, but didn't really have any intent in like actually following through with it. So I had kind of like just lost all hope. And I was like, well, even if they do buy the brand, like what are the odds they're going to hire all of us back? Like they're probably just going to buy the brand to have the brand and then do whatever they want with it. And I guess so fast forward a couple weeks after we got closed down, we all kind of agreed, because we all kept in touch over Slack. We all kind of agreed that it would be nice, because you may recall that when GameInformer.com was shut down that same day, like they basically shuttered GameInformer.com immediately, and then they put up this message that wasn't written by anybody on staff. A lot of people have suspicions it wasn't written by any human, if you get where I'm going there. And we all kind of decided it would be nice if we could put out a message to the community. So our editor-in-chief, Matt Miller, put out a one final kind of letter from the editor. It wasn't like Game Informer branded, but it kind of looked like it was like a page right out of like the magazine, just kind of thanking people and like, thanks for your support over the years. We really appreciate it, because, we were around for 33 plus years. And if you look on and Matt never posts on social media, so it was a rarity to have that happen. Like I think he may have like 3 posts on his Twitter account, and like one of them was like back in like 2012. It's like, hey, I'm really enjoying this new Transformers figure. It's like stuff like that. Like he does not use social media. So he was like, well, I'll break that rule to post this like letter from the editor, like kind of like a final like official farewell from us. And there is a response on there that says, hey, check your email. I've been trying to get in touch with you. And basically, it was a person who was representing an investment firm who wanted to reach out to Matt about trying to get connected to purchase the Game Informer brand. And she's like, I sent you an email, and Matt was like, well, I don't have it. I don't have anything from you. And he checked his spam. Her email went to spam. And so Matt got it, responded to it, and it turns out that this company was not only like just like interested in exploring it, but they were extremely interested in actually pursuing it. So Matt connected them with the old parent company, and yeah, it's just like negotiations kind of began right away, and it was a long process. It was a lot of like, because this is our livelihoods as well, and not only our reputation as an outlet, but also our livelihoods that were kind of hanging in the balance. But what really struck me was like, in those early conversations, I'm not going to pretend like I was like a lead driver in it. Like I was loosely involved with the conversations. Matt was the main person behind these conversations. And early on, it was kind of like, yeah, like we would love to, be a part of this if at all possible. And she was basically like, yeah, well, that's why we would want to buy it, is because we would want to leverage the expertise of the staff as well. And so that was like really like positive, and we kind of had like, because the parent company is a company called Gunzilla Games, which is the video game studio founded by Neil Blomkamp, the movie director. And we were kind of like, we had some apprehensions about that, but like after conversations, it was like, oh no, they want us to maintain editorial independence. They want us to keep on doing what we were doing, right? And like that was kind of the thing that was really encouraging for us, because like they didn't want to tarnish our reputation. They didn't want it to be like, oh well, Game Informer used to do this and now they're basically a PR agency for this company. It's like, no, Game Informer used to do this, they're back and they're doing it, but now like bigger and better than they used to do it. And that was kind of like the way that we were brought on. And it was an extremely refreshing thing once we did come on. And I was involved with a couple of calls in there, but Matt was again the driving force there. So shout out to him. Shout out to that woman who reached out to Matt initially. Her name is Alina. She is now our publisher. That is her position. She kind of oversees the magazine from like a business perspective. And it's been a great relationship with them, and they have allowed us to maintain our editorial independence. And they've actually, it's a refreshing change of pace, I'll say, to have a parent company that tells us how important we are to their business and how valued we are, and actually back that up, like where it's like, yeah, wow, you're investing in us, you're giving us resources, you're allowing us to go do things. Like that's the type of stuff that, not only tells you that you're important to them, it shows you. And then that also, boosts your morale and helps you, produce the best product that you can do. So I'm eternally grateful, not only that this company Gunzilla Games was excited enough about the Game Informer brand that they reached out to us. They were proactive about it, and then they followed through by acquiring the brand, and then hired back 100% of our staff, all the way from like editorial to office manager to marketing, all the way up. And then we also have been able to staff back up just a little bit. Like it's not been like just a complete like runaway of like, all right, we're just going to spend millions of dollars and we'll be shut down in a year because we're spending millions of dollars. No, it's been a very controlled, upscale of our staff, which has been nice. Like we've hired like a video guy, we've hired another designer, and it's been great to be able to staff back up just a little bit, and also realize that the business people are also doing this with seemingly the intent of having this be a long-term investment, rather than just like a flame that burns twice as bright but also goes out.
Yeah, that is incredible. That is so, and it's so rare to hear that investment companies actually do something like that is decent, that is for the betterment of the company that they are investing in. So shout out to them, shout out to Matt, shout out to the people who, like yourself, like the people who are all involved in like bringing Game Informer back, because 33 years to be to have a company and blossom and grow with people. Like that is a full grown adult of 33 years. And I think that that is so cool that they saw the integrity of that and they saw the ongoing potential of what Game Informer is and what can continue to be. And they were like, no, we want the original people back. We want everyone to have their maintained job. Because I even remember, like I was a freelancer at the time for Game Informer when everything was going on. And I remember being in Michael's, what was it? I think, yeah, it was Michael's craft store with my mom. And I saw the post and I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? That's how we all got notified for the freelancers that it was just gone. And I'm like, this is, how did this even happen? We were just all shocked because none of us got an email. None of us were like notified of anything. I know that was how you and a lot of people who were like had permanent positions there found out. But to have this happen and to have like kind of your trust in the industry in a way, kind of be, I don't want to say refurbished. I don't know if that might be a good word, but kind of refurbished in a way. Yeah. No, I mean like refurbished in a way of like now you guys are back in terms of like,
yes,
wow,
yes.
yeah. Like this was actually like something that could have gone bad, but it is something that went really, really well. And I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, and I think I told the story last time I was on this show of like, you know, I was off that day. I had taken that Friday off because I was writing our next cover story at the time. And I had just gotten back from Japan. I was exhausted and I was like, I'm going to take Friday off. And so my other coworker was like, yeah, I'm taking Friday off too. You want to get coffee in the morning? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we're sitting there wrapping up our coffee and breakfast. And we both just got the notification, mandatory meeting with HR in 1 hour. And we're just like, I bet I know what that is. And it's like that. And so we both had to like rush home and like with this like pit in our stomachs with like a pretty good idea that we were about to be unemployed in an hour. So, you know, that was a mad rush to be like, all right, how many contacts can I save from my inbox? Because I knew I was going to lose contacts as soon as that happened.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, like lose the work that you guys have done on the website, lose so many meaningful articles. I know that there was so many articles that previous writers who were freelance had lost completely and they had no idea about it. So it's kind of stuff like that of where I think media preservation also when it comes to not just games, but when it comes to journalists' work, I think that's incredibly important for companies to even have like backup save files in case like, you know, someone who might not be in a company anymore for whatever reason wants to like look back on their work for like nostalgic purposes or, you know, give it to another future employer. But yeah, it's just so cool to be able to see it now. Like, so now this version of Game Informer 2.0, as I want to say, when you're
looking, referred to it that way as well. So that's very perceptive.
So when it comes to now Game Informer 2.0, what are the projects that you can currently talk about that are in the works? Or if you can't, what are the projects that you are really happy with that came out this year so far?
Oh man. So, you know, I'm looking up at my board here. I have all my cover stories like spread across in frames on my wall. And I've done 3 of them, which is, you know, a little bit less than a third of our first year because, you know, we do 10 issues a year. So that, I mean, I remember I waited 4.5 years, or 4 3/4 years before I got to do my first cover story. And now, you know, I did 3 of them in the first year back, and I'm really proud of all of them. I did Borderlands 4, Ninja Gaiden 4, so 2 4s back to back, and then 007 First Light. And, you know, I had a chance to line up a couple of big things in the coming months that I can't really talk about yet, but very excited to talk more about those in the coming weeks and in one case months. So, you know, that's something I'm really proud of. I'm also proud that, you know, we've been able to kind of hit the ground running with all of our different efforts that we've, you know, because when we were working together prior to our shutdown, we all had kind of like just out of necessity slid into like these little niches where it's like, all right, I play racing games and sports games. Nobody else on staff does that, so I will review those. And this guy loves adventure games, and this person loves this genre. So it's like the fact that we were able to keep our staff, and like it was weird because we were away for 8 months, and coming back, it felt like, you know, there was a brief adjustment period of like getting our feet back in the pool, where it's like oh my god, it's so cold, and and then you just eventually you jump in and you're like, okay, adjustment period over, we're good now, let's swim. And that's kind of what it felt like, where it was like, man, I really did feel off my game for like these first 2 weeks. And thankfully, we did have a month before we were, fully launched and everything, because we were hired back, I think officially like February 15th of 2024 or 2025, I'm sorry. And then we relaunched on March 24th, 2025. So we had like just over a month to like get the website back up and running. And you may recall there were actually like quite a bit of like bugs and everything, because the website, when we received it, was in a pretty big state of disrepair, at no fault of our own. It was just the way that we received all the files. So it was like a pretty diligent task to kind of piece all those things back together and make sure if you clicked a link, it was going to take you to that link and stuff like that, which, is pretty important on a website. And so I think the fact that, we were able to come back together as a team after we all kind of went our separate ways, even though we stayed in touch, and we kind of held on to this hope that we would come back, even if it felt like the most extreme of long shots for a while. We came back together and we were able to gel again as a team, and also, get through the fact of like literally like relaunching as basically a startup, even though this is a brand that's been around for 3.5 decades now. It's like, yeah, we're basically a startup now, running our own thing and like operating as such. So it has been an adjustment in that way, but like the way that we have come back together and like slid back into our old habits while continuing to kind of like optimize and figure out the best ways that we want to cover stuff and work through the various problems that present themselves with having like, so many different pillars. Cause like we have the website, we have the podcast, we have our YouTube channel, but then we also have a magazine on top of all of that, which is something that most outlets don't have to worry about. And having like, daily deadlines, weekly deadlines, monthly deadlines, because of all the different pillars. It's like there's things that happen at different intervals because of these different deliverables that we have. And the fact that we, as a small team, we're still a very small team. Like I remember our previous parent company would be like, why don't we, like, he would call us into meetings and be like, why aren't we competing with IGN? And I would say, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to bring up IGN's staff page. And I want you to look at their social media team and tell me how many more people on their social media team than we have on our entire editorial staff. That's why we're not competing. So it's like kind of like that, where it's like, even with this small, lean team, that, we don't
still
have
a powerhouse.
We don't have the numbers of a giant like group like IGN, which I love IGN. IGN does incredible work. This is no shade at them. Trust me, I've written for them. I'm friends with many of the people over there, but they have a lot of people relative to every other outlet. So the fact that we're able to do so much with such a small team is, I think, maybe my biggest point of pride.
And that's the thing. You guys are tiny yet mighty. It's one of those things. you guys have a small team, but you guys are so dedicated, and so, like, that was, I think, because it was the major reason why it was such a goal for me when I was starting out in the industry to work in some capacity with Game Informer, because like that was the epicenter of what I knew, gaming reporting, all of that. Besides IGN and Kotaku, like that was it for me. I signed on as a freelancer, and that was probably one of like the dream freelancer, because that was the first time I was noticed in the industry, was back in, I think it was 2022 actually. And I remember doing the Assassin's Creed Mirage edit for the review video, and then I edited the Bordeaux interview for Game Informer. So it was such an interesting thing too, because it's just like, when you are fresh, and I know for a fact that like others feel this way too, when you're fresh in the industry and when you go and you see things with like doe eyes and like eyes wide open, you're just like, whoa, this is so cool. And then you realize that it's like, well, there's some greed, there's some mayhem, there's a little bit of chaos that goes on, but it's still I'm trying to be nice. There's here.
A whole lot of chaos and mayhem.
Well, I'm just trying to be nice here. It's one of those things where it's just like, I was given the nickname the golden retriever of the industry, because I'm very nice to a lot of people, sometimes people who I should not be very nice to, but whenever I see
quality, though.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yeah, depending on what situation it is, yes. But whenever I look at the industry, it's like I still see the industry that I fell in love with, and I like, no matter even if Game Informer, Kotaku, every outlet were just to be, and I don't say this as a serious thing, I say this as like a, hypothetical. If every outlet in the world would cease to exist, every person who I got to know would recreate those things in a heartbeat and they would succeed again. That's how powerful.
That.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's how
a lot of indies.
Yeah. And that's how powerful a lot of I know the outlet that unfortunately recently closed down, I know for a fact that those people are going to rise up, come back, and do something even more creative all over again. And that's the beautiful, powerful thing, I think, about the gaming industry. Not that it isn't present in other industries, but it's especially present in gaming because so many creatives come together who know one another. Even if it's a small place, it's a massive world that we exist in. It's my cheesy way of saying that everything is restartable and everything can be achieved with the teamwork and something happening, like each chain reaction going after the other. So I think it's very important to for people who are listening and watching, it's very important to understand that while there are lots of pieces that have to go in place legally and all that kind of stuff, it's never impossible to make something happen.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that to your point, like whether you're a developer, whether you're in games media, whether you're a YouTuber, it's important to remember that I think we're all doing this because we have this shared love of gaming and of the industry. And it's like you don't go into this industry unless you love video games, unless, I would argue that there's some executives that maybe flaunt or spit in the face of that rule. Like there's probably some executives who are like, yeah, I'll just get into the games industry because I can probably make a quick buck that way and then take my golden parachute and go do something else. But like if you are one of the creatives, or if you are somebody who is working in the trenches of like QA, or you are doing media coverage or YouTube videos or Twitch streams, you are somebody who loves gaming. I've been doing this for 18 years now, and I'm with you. I still see the industry that I fell in love with back when I was in college, right? Or I mean, I've been playing video games since I was like 4 years old, and it was like my first real obsession. So like, I mean, I've been doing this like in terms of like gaming for like 3.5 decades now, and just about as long as Game Informer's been around, I've been gaming. And I grew up reading Game Informer. It was one of those magazines that I loved reading as a kid. I still have a lot of my issues from like high school and college like in my storage, and like I remember, like that was how I found out about Batman Arkham Asylum, which was one of my favorite games of that generation. Was I had a subscription to Game Informer, and I remember the issue arrived in the mail when I was in college, and I was reading it, and I'm like, this sounds too good to be true. This game is never coming out. And I think it was like a year before it came out, so it was like way off in the distance, and I was just like, this game's just never going to come out. This is forever. This sounds too good to be true. And then it came out, and it was not too good to be true, but it was so great, and I loved that game so much. I love that series so much. And so I have a deep love for Game Informer. I have a deep love for gaming, and I've never been the kind of guy where, like, I remember back when I would go to E3, I remember a lot of people in the industry, a lot of like peers and media folks would be like, ugh, E3, it's so busy. And I'm just like, what are you guys talking about? This is like Christmas morning for me. Like, I love E3. And obviously it had its problems, and it unfortunately no longer exists. But we have Summer Game Fest now, which does a lot of the more important roles of E3, and a lot of publishers doing their own kind of things. But like, I never really lost that spark for the industry. Like, yeah, you go through ebbs and flows of like, feeling a little burnt out, or, wanting a break, but that's natural for anything you're doing. If I was a guitar player and I was in, like, I love music. If I was a guitar player and I was playing guitar 8 hours a day, there'd be a couple of days where I'm like, I'm just going to like, go walk around the lake instead today or something, like eventually you do need a break from whatever you're doing, no matter how much you love it.
Exactly. And that's the same thing that I feel even with doing content creation, because on my main channel, I do Souls and Souls-like stuff, as you know. So for me, it's just like anytime that I'm doing like a lore video where I'm doing like a full walkthrough for, like, right now I'm doing for Dark Souls 2. It gets to a point of where your brain is just like not braining at the moment. It just like glitches out, and you're just like, I know you're in there, like, just work for a second. Like, sometimes you just need that break. And I feel like when you are working on a publication so massive as Game Informer, what is that that process of relaxation look like for you? Because gaming, if even though it's a hobby, it's also become your job as well.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where like I still game as like my number one hobby. Like it like I was feeling a little like, out of gas running on empty this past couple of weeks, and I took a long weekend this weekend. I took Thursday and Friday off, and I tried to be as disconnected as possible, even though I was checking in a few things because, Summer Game Fest don't sleep. So we're scheduling and stuff. So I had to check in on that and like coordinate all that. And I'm leading our efforts for Summer Game Fest this year. So I had to like talk to people and be like, hey, what do we want? Do we want to schedule this? Who's going to take this? Stuff like that. And it's like, so I couldn't completely disconnect, but like I basically just, took time, did my own thing, but like I haven't had a chance to play very many games for fun lately because I've been so head down on so many games for work. So I just took the time, and I was I decided middle of last year I was like, oh, I'm gonna replay the Wild era Zelda games. So like Breath of the Wild, the two Hyrule Warriors games that recently came out on Switch and Switch 2, and then concluding it with Tears of the Kingdom. So I've played Breath of the Wild. I just finished it on Thursday. It's my third playthrough of it. I'm still absolutely obsessed with it. Still my favorite game of all time. And then I'm jumping into Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and then I'll jump into Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and then like grand finale being Tears of the Kingdom, which I've only played once. I've only played that the one time when it like right when it was coming out. So that was like really revitalizing to be able to actually sit down and play a game and not have to be like, all right, what am I gonna like? What criticism am I gonna write about this game? Because like I just finished reviewing Invincible Versus, which I liked quite a bit, but like the whole time I'm doing that, I'm thinking like, okay, what do I think about this mechanic? What do I think about this? How am I gonna phrase my criticisms of this part of it? Or how am I gonna, what's my intro gonna be? So like being able to just kick back, relax, put my feet up and play a game with like my brain basically turned off, and like even though I always fall victim to the like, oh, I'm playing this game, how can I make content out of this? And it's like I just want to have fun. Like that's like the big trap. And like that's why I'm like doing something that like it right now, the game that I decided, because I was like, all right, well, I want to play a couple of games. I started checking out Saros, which I'm very much enjoying, but I was like, I can't turn my brain off with this right now. I want to enjoy my long weekend. So what I did was I booted up MLB The Show 26 because I'm like, I know I'm not going to do any additional coverage of this game. Baseball season's like really gearing up now, and I know that I want to make it further in like my career mode save that like because I reviewed it already. So it's like I'm not going to be writing very much about this game anymore. So let me just do this and have fun before my next review game comes in. And that's been kind of fun. I was doing that for about an hour and a half before we started this podcast, and that is largely what my relaxation looks like, is playing things that I intentionally do not want to cover, or like things that are kind of off the beaten path, like exploring like lesser known games that like maybe we wouldn't have covered otherwise, but there's a way that I can give them like a small shout out in like we do like a what should you play this weekend thing, and it's like not necessarily reviews but like tiny little endorsements of like, oh, this game's pretty cool, like you should check it out if you like this type of game. So I was checking out a couple of those, and then also I love cooking. Like cooking is like if gaming is my number one hobby, cooking is my number two hobby. And so I cook almost every night, and that's something that also helps me kind of like, that's like almost the official like, all right, this is the line of like work is done, I'm making dinner. That is the time where I can transition my brain from like going in a million different directions and jumping into the kitchen, doing all the prep work, cooking it, plating it, making it look presentable, and then eating it. And then I'll usually like watch a couple episodes of TV or something with my fiance.
Nice. You see, that is just the epitome of relaxation, though, honestly, because like I feel the same way. I have to have something that disconnects my brain from like, okay, while my work is also my passion, I need to kind of disassociate the two in a way. So I've found recently I've gotten back into Pokemon, and I just for the first time got into Magic the Gathering and D&D. So wow. I don't like having expensive hobbies.
It's funny because I don't play Magic at all, but I was recently in Poland, and I was out there visiting Rebel Wolves for the Blood of Dawnwalker,
Oh,
and
nice.
there's a preview on GameInformer.com that you can go read. And I was out there with my my coworker Eric Van Allen, who
Mhm.
we the
Yes.
aforementioned Eric Van
Yes.
Allen, and he got me a booster pack of Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering, and I got a Blitzball and a and I'm very excited about that because I love Final Fantasy X. But like my only real exposure to Magic the Gathering was probably playing a set that is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars now because it was like 1996, 1997, whenever it was like very new. And like I was just on a camping trip with my grandfather and my grandfather's friend, and my grandfather's friend also brought his grandson. So like we were hanging out, and then they were hanging out, and he was like, "Oh, have you heard of Magic the Gathering?" And I'm like, "No." And he like pulled out. It's like the first set, and like we're playing with all these cards. I have no idea what cards I was using, but like I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And then Pokemon cards came out, and that took over my life instead of Magic the Gathering, which that's hardly much cheaper at this point.
At this point, yeah, no, you can't get like Paldean Fates. You can't get an ETB like much less than $500 at this point, which is, I don't. It's gross. No, absolutely
Yeah.
not. It's one of those things of where like at the even though it is a hobby of mine right now, I don't want to overkill it because if I see a card that I get the single, I'm not going to go ripping through a bajillion packs to see if I can get it. Like that's cool when you do get it because I actually have a funny story. There was, I think it was Paldea Evolved. I'm not quite sure what set it was in, but it was the goldfish, like the Magikarp. It was the chase card of the set. And I got an ETB and I was like, okay, you know what? Let me see. This was $45 at Walmart, which was a freaking steal. I was
Wow,
so
that's
happy.
it.
I was so happy about it. It was on sale because apparently that was like the lesser favorite ETB, unfortunately, which it has a lot of great pulls. It really, the beautiful art cards are just, they're amazing. And I went in, I got one of those, and on the first box attempt, I got the chase card, which was the Magikarp.
Hey.
And I was so happy about it when I found, because I thought it was quite a pretty card, and I was just like, I did not know that Magikarp would be a chase card in a group. This is amazing. So I actually, for my hobby that I do, I am doing a full master set of all Leafeon because that is my favorite Pokemon.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Leafeon, Gengar, Mimikyu, and Mew are my top four, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, what
Dragonite's
about?
my number one.
I love Dragonite. Dragonite was amazing in Pokopia. It's just such a sweet character that they did. Because I mean, whenever I did the review for Pokopia, I was just like, they gave these Pokemon so much character. It was so sweet.
They did a great job with Pokopia is still my game of the year so far. Like, I love that game.
Yeah, same. I mean, for me, it's like, what was it? Resident Evil 9 and Pokopia. It is between those two. I really enjoy Pokopia because the way that, besides the Uncanny Valley Ditto for a second, it was so sweet. The way that they created a game based on leaving the world better than it was left. And I really think that that is such a valuable lesson for even kids to learn when they're playing this game, because it shows them that, if you want to leave someone in a kinder, more gentler way than the world that it was left in before. And I think that, that's just such a sweet message though. And now we're going to go into some Nintendo stuff because I feel like this is such an important topic when it comes to Nintendo, of where normally we see Nintendo as kind of like, ooh, they kind of profit off of nostalgia in a massive way. But with the release of Fire Red and Leaf Green, we saw that at actually a very, what I would consider a reasonable price. But for a lot of people, they're like, oh, you can just emulate it or get it for free that way. What are your views right now on the emulation versus actually getting the game on the system that it's coming out for?
I always prefer to have it in the official ways, like even like dating back to like music. Like, yeah, okay, I had LimeWire. I destroyed a PC when I was a kid, like downloading music. Uh, but I always would prefer, like, as soon as I like got a hold of like iTunes and I could buy music like directly, I was like, oh, that's it. Like, I'm just gonna do that unless there's like for whatever reason not on iTunes. Then I will try to go buy the physical CD and rip it to iTunes. And like that has always been like kind of the way I go, just because it feels less wonky than like having to jump through the hoops of like any kind of emulation. Also, like if a developer or publisher is making their game available in a modern way and a modern platform, and easy to attain. I kind of want to reward that because I do think that game preservation is a big thing that we need to reward, and I would love to see like, more games brought forward and available for purchase on Switch because as much as I love Nintendo Switch Online's like catalog because it kind of has that Netflix effect where like there are so many games on that service that like I I pay for that so I can play online and I can play like Super Mario World whenever I want and Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. Like those are the games that I want to play whenever I want. But like, it's like I'm paying for the service already. So like these weird obscure games that Nintendo puts in like the NES catalog. It's like, "Oh yeah, what's that? I've heard about this, but I have no idea what this game is. Let me check it out because I have access to it for no additional cost." So that is the pro of that. The con is what happens if, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but say like 15 years down the road, Nintendo's like, "Oh, we're going to stop supporting Nintendo Switch Online and like we're going to stop paying for this." Because every time you go to play those, it has to ping the server and make sure that your account is active. So it's like there's I don't think it's going to preserve those games. I think it's just giving us a temporary solution. It preserves the games no more than like Netflix preserves movies. So it's like I would like it's cool that I could fire up my Wii right now and have all those games, even though that eShop is dead or the Wii Shop, sorry. And then same thing for my 3DS. Like that is cool that even though those online services no longer exist, they I still have access to all those things. So I have my doubts about that on the Switch and the Switch 2, but at the same time, like I've come around on that idea. But that said, like I appreciate that Nintendo put out Fire Red and Leaf Green and made it so it was one, reasonable, two, easily attainable, and three, it's like this version of this game that almost everybody loves, and it has aged really, really well because it like the Game Boy Advance graphics I think are the best graphics that Pokemon has ever had, like in terms of like visual style and like the pixel art just looking so freaking good. And so I wanted to reward them for that. And also, just having it on my Switch is so much, I prefer that so much more to having to like, like I said, jump through the hoops of emulation, which has its pitfalls as well. Like I know that a lot of people will swear by emulation and I more power to you if that's what you want to do. But I am a creature of convenience and I appreciate that like I can just throw my Switch into my bag and the thing that I downloaded from the eShop is easily playable and it fires up as soon as I tell it to fire up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was so shocked by whenever that was released, on top of the release of Pokopia. Now, Pokopia, depending on where you live, plus tax is $75. That was how much it was for me. And it was so fascinating to see that, yes, it is a new game. We are going to pay full game price. But when it comes to older generation games, like you said, like when you get a membership with Nintendo, one of the games I noticed that you get with it is Zelda and the Wind Waker. That was the very first Zelda game I ever played as a child. And it holds so many memories for me. And I feel like this kind of profit off of nostalgia can either be a good or a bad thing. Yes, we are getting one thing, but we have to pay for another in order to obtain it. And I feel like that's where a lot of people kind of get caught in that mix and crossfire of like, well, I want to get the shiny thing, but the shiny thing they're making it cost like in this exorbitant amount of money, or I have to pay a membership fee to do this. What is your kind of advice for those who want to do game preservation and in a reasonable way to do so for companies? Like what would your advice be for them?
For a company to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the people who are the masters at it right now are Digital Eclipse. They're the company that does like Atari 50 and Tetris Forever, where it's not just a compilation of games. Like, because Atari 2600 games, you couldn't really play those on any modern platforms unless, emulation, or maybe there's some games on Steam or something. But like to release Atari 50 and have all those games playable with all kinds of different options. You can usually turn on like God mode or whatever and make it so like, oh, this game's really hard. I'm going to be able to play like, how I want to play and not have to worry about like, the arcade era of like where it was designed to make you pump quarters into things. Like, I mean, that's certainly the case with the Marvel Maximum Collection, where it's like, okay, yeah, X-Men Arcade is incredible. It's a legendary game from the 90s. But man, was it designed to make you pump a lot of quarters into that cabinet. And having ways to play these games in a modern tint, I think that's really important. And Atari 50 does a great job with that. All of Digital Eclipse's stuff, whether it's, Tetris Forever or the Cowabunga collection they also did. So like they've done incredible work. They're one of my favorite studios by the result of how much amazing stuff they've done with like retro collections, because they also like if you played Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, I think that's what it was called, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah,
So
I'm not in the area of Mortal Kombat, so I'm not knowledgeable with that one.
I reviewed it for us, so I should know the
Okay.
full name. But it's like there's so many collections, and they all have like Legacy Collection, Cowabunga Collection, Maximum Collection. But like Mortal Kombat, Atari, they also do these documentaries where they talk to the people behind them. So when you fire it up, you can play through the timeline. Like you can play through like in timeline order of like, okay, well, we're going to talk about Atari 2600. You'll watch a little video. You can see like advertisements from the time, and then they've like scanned old ads and everything, which is incredible. And then you can be like, oh, and then Pong. So you can play Pong right then and there, and then move on to the next thing. And then here's an interview with this guy talking about the creation of Centipede. And then you can jump in and play that. And here's Space Invaders and Asteroids. And it just goes on and on like that. And that's the type of stuff that I think is so important, because it's also worked hand in hand. I think with the Video Game History Foundation, which is a wealth of information as well, and they do a great job of not only preserving these games but also contextualizing them within their time period. So it's like, yeah, this game came out in 1981 or whatever, and here's what was going on, and here's what the best practices were in game development. Here's the creator of this game telling you why certain things are that way. And they do such a great job of giving you that context in addition to the preservation. So I think that they are the gold standard of game preservation in terms of like video game studios. And I'd love to see more companies take that approach. And we've started to see more companies. Like Limited Run is the one that did Marvel Maximum Collection. And I like Marvel Maximum Collection, though it's not on the same level that we see from Digital Eclipse typically. But they did try some of that stuff, and it's cool that like they have like the instruction manuals scanned, or like one of the games that's included, they have the full design doc that you can like digitally thumb through, which is really neat. That's something that as a kid, that was a dream to be able to see like, oh, how do you design a video game? So like, those types of like legacy collections, whether it's from Digital Eclipse or from some of these others, I think that is the way to go if you're not wanting to sell them individually like they did with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. But I think most games, like they having those collections, like the Mega Man Legacy Collection is another great one. Digital Eclipse did that first one before Capcom, I think, took it internally for the rest of the Legacy collections. But that's the way that I would love to see so many. I would love to. Oh my God, I would love to see Nintendo jump on that. But like they always march to the beat of their own drum, so I'm not holding my breath.
I feel like in the console war area, they're kind of Team Switzerland, of where it's just like we have Xbox, we have PlayStation. It's just like Nintendo's like, hi, we're over here. Don't worry about us.
Yeah,
we're good.
Doing their own thing.
We're just hanging out. We're chilling. We're fine.
Yeah, on my podcast, because like there's my podcast has a lot of news stuff. It has a lot of like fun segments that I like to do, but we also do some speculation. And I always give the disclaimer that trying to predict what Nintendo's going to do is a fool's errand, because they're so unpredictable. And like, unless there's like these leaks that, seem like they're pretty well corroborated that have come out recently, you really don't know where Nintendo's going to go next. And that's fun, but it also can be frustrating, because it's like, why aren't you guys doing this? It makes so much sense. And they're just like, oh, we're going to do this. And it's just,
yeah, it's kind of like how I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, and we were like, well, which Pokemon game do you think they're going to come out with next? And I said, my best guess is that they are going to do a bundle of what was it, yellow, blue, and they are going to do Crystal.
oh,
And that's my best guess, because Crystal, I have to say, was it Crystal? Hold on a second. I think I actually do have it. This will be actually fun to show on camera, because what was it? I probably shouldn't. Crystal version. So this was the first Pokemon game I actually ever played.
Wow.
And still have I don't have the box anymore, unfortunately, but this is the first Pokemon game I ever played, and for some reason I have Zelda Oracle of Seasons and Paint the Townville Green from Powerpuff Girls. So that's apparently those. But yeah, this one is a joy because I feel like they will definitely do this one at some point, most likely in our lifetime. This one is probably, I think, the most interesting story-wise I've ever played for Crystal. Pokopia in itself, it's a fun story. It's something that's meaningful. But when it comes to like actual like linear narrative design, I feel like Crystal really hits a lot of things on the head. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always like I'm always going to be a Gen 1 guy because that's the game that I grew up on. That was the first RPG I ever played was Pokemon Blue, which I got for Christmas alongside my translucent purple Game Boy Color. And I still have my Game Boy Color. I actually recently dug it out. I have it over my shoulder right here. You might not be able to see it because my background's a little dark. But yeah, I mean, I have such fondness for that. But then, like, I think I can pretty safely say that I think Gen 2 is probably the best Pokemon game. Like, that for me, like, in terms of, like, I love going to, Johto is cool. And, like, they add all the Gen 2 Pokemon, which, like, I felt like we're still among the strongest Pokemon that they've done. But then the post game of the Johto games, where you go back to Kanto, is just unbelievable. It's the coolest thing Pokemon's ever done, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how like the series of Pokemon as a whole has, much like the Pokemon themselves, have just evolved and grown over time. And I think it's really interesting to see like new generations getting into Pokemon, where we now see millennial parents bringing their kids to card shows and all this. It makes me feel very old, but it's wonderful to see. You know,
I'm pretty sure you're substantially younger than me, so
I am 33.
I'm 39.
Okay, see, we are still millennials, so I mean,
Yes.
both of our hips crack whenever we wake up in the morning. Still, you know,
Come on.
it's so fun too because it's like I made a joke to my dad about like what was it? My back hurt when I got up this morning. He's 83 for context, and he was just like, you know what? I don't want to hear you complaining about pain until you are my age. I was like, yeah, but then by that time you won't be here to if you. Okay, carry on. Fine. I'll wait.
That's his way of saying I never want to hear you complain.
True. Yeah. And it's so fun to have that like kind of ribbing of jokes and everything, because whenever he enjoyed the Pokemon stuff just as much as I do. And he still like loves seeing the cards and everything, because he's the one who got me into games. Like the first game I ever played was Resident Evil 1 Remake on the GameCube in 2003. And I remember playing that game and hearing like the fire cracking and the graphics so incredible. Like they still hold up the graphics today. And I think that that is such a testament to just how young the gaming industry is as a whole, but also it has come so far in such a short span of time. So one of my next questions is, what is a game that still over this entire span of your entire gaming history still has the most impact on you, not just in your personal life, but in your professional life?
Oof. That's a big question.
You have the hard hitters here at the Gamers Respite. We do.
Still has the most impact personally and professionally. I mean, man, Pokemon as a franchise might be up there because one, it was my first RPG ever. Two, it was my first cover story for Game Informer. I was lucky enough to fly out to Tokyo and visit Game Freak for 2 days and write our Pokemon Sword and Shield cover story back in 2019. And that was so much fun being able to like go out and basically just hang out with Junichi Masuda and Shigeru Omori. Junichi Masuda was recommending like Japanese whiskeys while we were at dinner and like picking out which one I should drink next. That was very fun. And so, I mean, like, if I can say a franchise, it might be Pokemon, but like my favorite franchise is Zelda. I would say that like in terms of getting me into gaming, I think Mario and Sonic are probably the two most impactful, and I still have so much love for all of those franchises that I've mentioned to this day. I still play every Pokemon game. Zelda's still my favorite franchise. Mario and Sonic, I basically can't sleep the night before those games come out. So, I mean, it's just there's a lot of a lot of games. Like I'm trying to think of one singular game. Like the things I keep going back to are Super Mario World, Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, because I just finished that for the third time and it's my favorite game of all time. And Final Fantasy X. Those are the games that I think maybe are the most impactful. But like, there's things like I wrote a story for Game Informer. I want to say back in like 2015 or 2016 called "How Gaming Shaped My Life," and it was just like kind of like a personal essay about all the ways that like video games have like altered the course of my life or strengthened parts or enhanced other parts, like from playing SNES with my dad, when he would get home from like he traveled every single week for work, so he would get home like Thursday night and then leave Monday morning. So like in that very brief time that I had with him, every single weekend we would play a lot of like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario Kart. So it was a way that I would bond with my dad when he was the brief times that he was back. And so there's that, but then there's also like, it's also the reason that I got really into tennis. And I, and baseball, like for a long time, I wanted to be a professional baseball player growing up. And a large part of that was because I got really into baseball video games on the Sega Genesis. And so I was like, that made it so like, oh, I played Little League, but I was terrible. But then once I got like into like Triple Play Gold Edition was like my number one jam back then, on Genesis, and back when EA Sports made baseball games. And I that was what made me be like, oh, I really, really love the game of baseball. I'm gonna like watch every single game that the Baltimore Orioles play, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna play baseball every chance I have. So that's when I started getting really good at baseball as well. Because I had this built-in passion for it. And then like the same carried over, like when the Dreamcast came out, I got really into Virtua Tennis, and like I played Mario Tennis on N64, and that's how I learned the rules of tennis. And then my sophomore year of high school, I severely sprained my ankle a week before baseball tryouts. And I missed an entire season and I got out of practice. I got rusty and I never played like baseball again, basically. So what I did my junior year is I was like, you know what? I think that like tennis tryouts are a lot less like competitive. And I know the rules of tennis. I mean, I've never picked up a tennis racket in my life, but I know the rules of tennis. So I walked onto the court in first day of tryouts and I made the team. So it was like,
You had that same insertion of information as in the Matrix, of where it's just like a download of data.
it felt that way because I knew all the strategies because of Virtua Tennis. I knew how to score it and I knew the rules, and like I knew everything about like where positioning you should be, like, and everything because of the tutorials and because of playing through like the arcade modes in Virtua Tennis. And like, I have avoided car accidents because I knew how to control my car when it was hydroplaning because of Gran Turismo. So like there are things where like gaming has shaped my life in so many different ways, let alone being like, just the biggest passions for me as well. It also turns me on to other passions. I got more into rock and roll because of Guitar Hero. It's stuff like that where like, you develop these passions through your other passions, and I love that about gaming because it's such a diverse medium that it can, if you love sports games, it can turn you on to that sport. If you love fighting games, it can turn you on to martial arts. If you love music video games, you can get into an entire new genre of music if you want. Like there are so many artists that I love now because I found them through Guitar Hero or Rock Band.
You see, that's how I am with the Police. I did the Guitar Hero, and I had no idea like who they were, everything. I mean, there were so many that I found. Like I even remember when I think Aerosmith was on Guitar Hero, and when I heard that, I saw their music video for "Don't Want to Miss a Thing." And then I was just like, nope. And I like them. They're great. They're fantastic. So yeah, games are just wonderful in their entirety. And I feel like it is probably one of the most influential pieces of media ever, because you can tell so much within a story in a video game and have someone experience it and play through it at the same time. Perfect example, Hellblade: Senua's Saga. It is probably one of the most psychologically influential games. For those who are listening and don't know this about me, I have a degree in psychology. And whenever I was going through that game, I did a psychologically derivative article for the review of that game. And I thought that this is a really beautiful way to explore schizophrenia and how it affects the brain and how it affects the person who has it. And by the end of the game, I was just like a bawling mess. And I was thinking like this person finally understood their purpose and their nature, and they understood kind of not what was going on in their brain, but understanding the messaging that was going on by what was happening. So I feel like, and they even had people who were diagnosed as who have schizophrenia help out in the creation of Hellblade, which I think is incredible. They have a psychiatrist on team doing that, and just the audio design in and of itself is probably some of the best that I've seen besides Saros and Returnal.
Yeah, and I shout out to them for really leaning into, talking about mental health in a way that is not only taking the subject matter seriously, and I also give big props to games like Celeste as well for, exploring topics of mental health. I'm a big proponent of, taking care of your mental health as you would your physical health. I'm somebody who has ADHD, has generalized anxiety and struggles with that pretty much every day. So like, I love that, game makers are not only wanting to talk about these conditions and these struggles that people have in their day-to-day lives, but also do it in a way that is respectful and from a place of education, right? Like it's working with scholars and experts to make sure that these things are represented. I mean, it's the same thing as like, when Forza Horizon 6 is coming out this month, I was talking to the developers behind that, and like I was like, like Japan is a very different culture than some of these other other places that you've gone in the series, and you're kind of encouraged to like tear up the landscape of these games. So like, this is a culture built very much on like respect and like reverence for like the important places in their country. Like, how did you approach that? And they were like, yeah, we worked very closely with like cultural consultants and like what is okay, what's not okay. And I love that these developers are doing that, because it would be very easy to just be like, yeah, let's go to a shrine and to do donuts, and it's like, nope, that's not a great idea, guys. Yeah. So I'm glad that they are doing that, and I'm glad that anytime that a developer wants to approach these topics or go somewhere that they may not be from, I think that it is important that they work with experts in those fields, because you don't, even if you go in with the best of intentions, you could definitely step on some toes in ways that you never would have imagined.
Oh, absolutely. And even the same, besides mental health, can also be said for cultural significance in storytelling as well. Mm-hmm. So like, what was it? For example, South of Midnight culturally was just an incredible story. Like the way that they did the lore of Two-Toed Tom, and the way that they did so much, even the music, like the music was probably my favorite part of it all. I was fangirling whenever I heard the synchronicity of the music and the beats that you are hitting the enemies with. That to me was just incredible sound design. Shout out to Compulsion, because they just did an incredible job with that game. And even whenever it comes to, for example, Blood of the Dawnwalker, I'm really interested to see how they handle the lore and the mythos of vampires, because again, just to say for people who do not know, I also did my thesis, my psychological thesis on the history of the psychology of vampires. And yeah, and in college that was a big one to try to get through. So I dove into that. I told my professor, and he was just like, "Yeah, sure, let's go, let's do it." I'm like,
"That's so cool."
Okay, I thought I would have a little more resistance in that, but thank you. And when I did it, I went over the entire historicity of where the vampire lore started from to where it is now, talking about Blood Rain and Twilight, all that kind of stuff, the cultural referencing. So I'm very interested to see historically if they do the vampiric lore justice, because that's the one thing that I'm very interested in. So like anything that has vampires, I am down to play at all whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, that game is, after seeing it in action when I traveled out to Poland a couple weeks ago, that skyrocketed up my list of like games that I'm excited for to come out this year. Like the level of like choice and consequence that they are giving, not to mention it seems like it's a very cool vampire story as well. Like it looks like this is like one of the most like player directed narratives that I have seen in a very, very long time. So I cannot wait.
That sounds like kind of when you said that, it kind of reminded me of Baldur's Gate 3, not gonna lie. So it makes me very excited to check it out and play it. Like even when I saw the trailer alone, I was like, I wonder if they're going to do a medium type thing of where you can go between the dark and the light and play between that. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing at all. But one of the other questions I had for you in terms of what games that are going to be coming out this year and what you're excited for, what is kind of your dream game this year to be a part of and review and cover?
I mean, if they do an Ocarina of Time remake, which is, reported, like that was my favorite game of all time for 20 years before Breath of the Wild came out. So, I would love to do anything related to that. I've been trying to chase Nintendo for probably almost 10 years now to do I guess 8 years because it was on the anniversary in 2018 was the last time I was trying to do like a big retrospective on Ocarina of Time, and it just didn't come together, which is unfortunate. But like, if there was a way, if that ends up being the case, that those rumors and leaks are true, I would love to take part in any kind of coverage for that because that game just had such a profound impact on me. It expanded my mind of like what a video game could be back in 1998. But also I'm super excited about Wolverine.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
Like
excited.
Insomniac has more than proven themselves. If the Ocarina of Time that is coming out this year, that's probably my most anticipated for the rest of the year. But if it's not, or if it comes out next year or whatever, like that, Wolverine is probably my most anticipated for the rest of the year, even higher than GTA 6 for me personally, because I grew up. Not only do I love the Spider-Man games so much, like Insomniac has knocked it out of the park with all three of the games they've put out, one, two, and Miles Morales, but like those are the two superheroes I grew up reading their comics, right? It was Wolverine and it was Spider-Man. Like I would either have the X-Men comics or I would go and get the solo Wolverine comics. And then also, Spider-Man was a rotation or in rotation for me pretty frequently as well. So to have this amazing studio that has more than proven themselves in the world of creating a Marvel, like a very ambitious Marvel game, like they've shown that they can do that, and they've shown that they do these characters justice, and they show that they understand the source material and how to make combat fun and everything. Wolverine's going to be a slightly different challenge because he's not like, the huge like mobile like swing across the entire city in the matter of like a few minutes, but like I think that they've got the chops to do this as well. So like I have nothing but trust in that, and like it's a character that I love so much and have loved for the vast majority of my life. So those are the two I would say: Ocarina of Time remake, if with the big asterisks of if it exists, and Wolverine, which is those are the two that I would be like absolutely tripping over myself to get to cover.
Oh gosh, it made me think when we were talking about what is a game that changed you, kind of like it inspired you throughout personal and professional. It's really interesting to hear about Wolverine and Spider-Man because Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, actually. Love Spider-Man. I grew up reading Spider-Man and Superman comics as a kid.
Nice.
So when you say that, it's just like, I'm so excited to see how Wolverine plays out because it's such a mixture of you have the Wolverine character as a person, but you don't have, like you said, the bouncing from building to building, those kinds of mechanics. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how they implement their really buttery smooth mechanics into the fighting style that we love about Wolverine.
Yeah, it's amazing because like I had a chance to actually sit down with Brian Michael Bendis. I don't know if you read Ultimate Spider-Man, but like that was him. Yeah, he was the guy who basically gave us the Spider-Man that the MCU basically took inspiration from to make their Tom Holland Spider-Man. And like just talking to him about like the creation of like getting into like really drilling into like why he's such a good like writer for like depicting a character's personality and like really drilling into like their character. It was such a fascinating conversation. He also told me the story about when he helped write the first ever MCU post-credit scene at the end of Iron Man 1, and they all just thought it was like, oh, that was a fun little Easter egg that like Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, comes in and drops the word Avengers, and like like he was like that was so cool to like hear from the guy like, yeah, we just thought it was a fun little thing, and then like next thing we knew, Kevin Feige was like, no, we're actually going to do this. And
That's
he's
amazing,
like,
actually. Oh
yeah,
my
it was so
God.
cool.
But before we actually get into the next topic, which is going to be talking about the Switch 2, I actually realized I forgot to say which one was my game that
Yes.
has been so impactful, personal and professional. It still has to be the Resident Evil franchise, actually,
Mm.
because during this year I actually got the chance to do a full video walkthrough for IGN for Resident Evil 9. And
Wow.
that was an incredible kind of full circle moment for me because playing Resident Evil 1 Remake as a kid, I think I was like 11 years old when I played that for the first time. And then getting to do this was probably one of the most fulfilling things career wise I've ever done. And getting to see like everyone enjoying the walkthrough, and it was like one full thing, like one long video that was posted on IGN. So it was on the main channel, and it was one of those moments of where I was like, wow, shit, okay, this is actually like really fucking cool.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's incredible. That those pinch me moments are like kind of what you live for in this industry, especially because it's like, yeah, like getting to talk to a creator that you love, like their work, or getting to work for an outlet that you grew up reading or grew up watching or whatever, like that. Those are the moments that really make all of the difficult moments that we've all gone through in this space worth it.
yeah, it makes all of like the no's that I've received in the industry just that much more impactful because it's like, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I have worked my fucking ass off in this space. So to have those little moments of where I'm just like, wow, okay, I get to take this in for a little bit. I know you've had those moments too of where you're just like, this is real. What, this is actually real. Cool. Okay. Like when I went to Los Angeles for my first preview event last year, I remember us talking about it actually, of where it was just like, yeah, this is for the Lies of P overture. And that was a weird moment in and of itself because I know like imposter syndrome was kicking my ass that week. I was just like, okay, wait, is this like really happening? Are they sure that they picked the right person? And I was like, no, I actually do deserve this.
Yeah, and I think I told you that like I still deal with imposter syndrome 18 years in, and it's like I hope that makes it so your imposter syndrome feels a little bit more like imposter syndrome and not actually like, you not being deserving of this, because like I think that anybody who is, relatively introspective will have those moments of self-doubt, and I think naming it is important, that like, yeah, this is just something that a lot of people struggle with, and you know realize that you, like you said, you have worked your ass off and you have put in all the hours it takes to get to where you are. And yeah, like I mean, there's still a lot of times where I'm like, oh man, like why am I here? Like why not somebody else? And then like, there, and especially like when you have like a really tough period where just the words don't come. It's like you're like, man, like have I forgotten how to make words put together and make sound good? And it's like, oh no, like it's just everybody goes through struggles, everybody goes through doubts, and I think that when you remember that, it actually makes it so you don't feel like you're doubting yourself as much anymore.
It's interesting you bring that up because that moment of doubting period I recently experienced with my review I was working on for Pragmata. And we've known one another long enough now that you know that I cover very difficult to talk about topics in a lot of my reviews. For GTA 5, it was the torture scene that Trevor did. In Fallout 3, it was the racism. In even Detroit Become Human, it was the misogyny. And it was so much that I was like, well, in Pragmata, I saw dog whistles. And I was like, okay, this isn't something that I like seeing, so I want to make sure that my ass is covered just in case, because it was a massive allegation that I was sweeping against part of the game. And so many people, like I had the amount of comments I had to delete under that video that I published was just immense. Like I think I left there were only 2 positive comments that were actually left. But by the end of it, I was trying to figure out how do I need to word something that is so horrific and gross in nature that I need to still make it sound professional and informative for people, and that was a really difficult thing to do. That was probably my hardest review I had to write because it was one of those times of where it's just like I didn't have to mention it, but I felt a moral obligation to mention the thing that not a lot of people were trying to that they saw, but they didn't want to mention it at all. So.
Yeah, that's always a tricky thing to have to navigate, especially with like, how reactionary everybody is. Like having social media is tricky because everybody kind of treats each other like you treat everybody else on the road when you're driving, where it's like you're angry at the car. You're not angry at the person, right? You don't see the person behind the wheel. You're just yelling because a car cut you off, and you're yelling at the inanimate object that has a person inside of it, even though you're saying things about that person, but like you're in your brain, it's tricked to like, oh, there's like so many layers of like insulation between us that you say things that like you wouldn't say to that person's face because like that would be hurtful, So it's like, I think that is certainly the case on the internet as well. And it's always frustrating, but like, you're the psychology person here, so you probably have more insight into that than I do.
It's so weird too, because it's like for the longest time, I would always like answer back quips and all that kind of stuff. And I realized recently that the risking my mental health is not worth responding back to people who do not want to converse with me in good faith. Absolutely not. So I just delete the comments. I move on unless someone actually like is questioning something in a good faith and wants to know about something and is intriguing or inquiring about anything. I don't have a problem answering back. But if you're gonna sit down and tell me that I'm if there's like, I don't know, a bajillion different things, I'm not gonna. No, absolutely not. So, but one of the next topics I want to dive into is the Switch 2. It has been a little bit now that the Switch 2 has been out. I want to know your insights because you have an entire podcast dedicated to Nintendo stuff. I want to know what things you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, what do you think they still need to work on in terms of the hardware, if anything.
I think that it's a very big improvement over the original Switch. I mean, we are now getting a lot of third-party games that just were not possible on the Switch 1. I think that, near the end of the Switch 1 life cycle, we started seeing a lot of third-party games just not coming to Switch anymore, or like get announced for Switch and then get canceled. And you don't see as much of that. I mean, we saw Borderlands 4 kind of get canceled after, but like that's I think largely because they were having a hard time optimizing that game for their flagship consoles, let alone this other console that, is less powerful, even if it's more powerful than the Switch 1. They were having problems with the PS5 and Xbox Series X and PC versions. So I think that they were like, let's just focus on that. That's where the vast majority of people are going to play. But, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on Switch was a pipe dream, but now it's there, even though it does make some concessions. Like there's some items that are removed, there's some resolution that's a pretty sharp downgrade, but it's there. You can play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the go on like in a thin form factor of the Switch. It's not on the Steam Deck. Well, I mean, it is on the Steam Deck, but it's not like, the Steam Deck is huge and like it's built like a powerhouse PC. The Switch 2 is built for efficiency. And, the thing that Nintendo's always going to have a leg up on is they have exclusive rights to the number one developer in the video game industry's history, and that is Nintendo. The Nintendo games are not appearing anywhere else, so that automatically gives any Nintendo console a leg up because you can't play Zelda or Mario or Donkey Kong or any of those franchises or Pokemon on other platforms, right? Like, so that is the thing that Nintendo is always going to have the advantage. They're always going to have the advantage in the nostalgia market, like we've talked about, because nobody has the history that Nintendo has. Nobody has the back catalog that Nintendo has. So those are automatic advantages. But then the hardware itself is such a step up. Things like the mouse mode are great. Things like the game chat are cool. But like, I think the thing for me was just like, all right, the form factor feels better. The screen, even if it's not an OLED screen, I think it's just a huge improvement over the original Switch. And I mean, the new power is just a huge boom to the library, right? Like being able to play, like I told you I just finished my Breath of the Wild replay, and being able to play that at 60 FPS was huge. Like that's incredible. Like it runs so smooth now. Like it's a brand new experience that is worth the replay now because of that 60 FPS upgrade. And I think that in and of itself is a really strong like upgrade over the Switch One, even though the Switch One is maybe my favorite console of all time, just because of the number of amazing games that came out on it. But then you look at the first year of game releases, and it was also a pretty solid year. I don't think it's as good as the Switch One's first year, because we got Breath of the Wild, we got Mario Odyssey, we got Splatoon 2, we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, we got ARMS. Like, we had all kinds of huge games that came out, like genre-defining games that came out on that first year of the Switch One. You look at the Switch 2's lineup in its first year, and it's respectable. Mario Kart World, I know some people were disappointed by it, but I maintain that it's a very solid Mario Kart game. And the Knockout Tour is one of my favorite multiplayer modes ever, where it's so much fun to just jump on there and play Knockout Tour for a couple hours or whatever. Donkey Kong Bonanza, so much fun. Metroid Prime 4, I know people were disappointed by it, but I still think it was a pretty good game. And then, of course, games like Pokopia and Tomodachi Life. We're seeing Nintendo dip into these franchises that I think a lot of people considered things like Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven to be kind of DOA. Like there was no signs of life on those franchises. And then, now there's rumors of Star Fox getting a new entry this summer. And like, these franchises that have been dormant for so long, we're getting a new Yoshi game. We haven't had one of those since Crafted World on Switch One. And I think that the success of the Switch One and now the Switch Two is enabling Nintendo to also dig deeper into its catalog of franchises. And I would love to see them revitalize other things like F-Zero or stuff like that. Like, those are franchises like Pilot Wings even could be cool. Like those games are they had their I had a listener write in asking if we'd ever get another Wave Race game. And I think that would be cool too, because those franchises were huge back in the day. And it's like, man, that would be so cool if we could get we got a new Pokemon Snap game. Like, that's crazy that we've gotten all these franchises. Like, basically they dug them out of their graves and revitalized them, and in some cases they were very good. I mean, some cases they kind of missed the mark, like Mario Strikers, but most of them have been quite good. And I think the Switch 2 is just I didn't need them to reinvent the wheel going from the Switch 1. I needed them to just update it with modern hardware. 2017 to 2025 is a pretty big leap when you look at just the technology available to us in a reasonable price point. And they did that. They made it a bigger and better Nintendo Switch, and they made everything on Switch 1 compatible on Switch 2. And that's really all they needed to do to be successful, I think. I mean, they don't have their, COVID Animal Crossing release moment like they did on Switch 1, but there's bound to be something that comes out on Switch 1, whether it's the 3D Mario, whether it's a new Zelda game, or, something along those lines that is going to drive people to the stores to buy Switch 2s in droves. But, it's selling very well, even though if they had to adjust their forecast, it's still selling quite well. And it's, Nintendo is outside of the Wii U, they've had an incredible track record with their home consoles. And the Switch 2, I think, is a continuation of that.
You got hugs. I understand that you felt lonely here. I give you kisses. And we'll see if you can be chill up here. If he can't, he's just going to be a tiny gremlin right now. But what I think it's really interesting, though, because with the Switch 2 and with the new hardware upgrades, even with the magnetic, with the clip-in controls, it's really interesting to see how many quality of life differences there are with this console. The back stand actually works now, for crying out loud. Before it was just snapping off like a little piece of plastic. And every time that I would try to use on the Animal Crossings version, that stand, it would kind of go back too far to where I was concerned that it might break. So he wants to go out. Hold on one second. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I think that they did a lot of really big quality of life stuff, and that the magnetic Joy-Cons, the kickstand, those are all great call outs that I completely forgot about because there's so many other ones. But like I said, like they didn't need to reinvent the wheel. And I was my biggest concern coming off the Switch 1 is because Nintendo loves its gimmicks. Like ever since the GameCube, the Wii, the Wii U, they all were very like gimmick driven, right? And they wanted the gimmick of the Switch was, oh, it's a core gaming device. It has like some things like motion controls, gyroscope, stuff like that. But the main gimmick is you could just take it wherever you want. And I was like, well, that's cool because that is a gimmick built around core gaming. That's why the Switch works so well. And I was worried that Nintendo was going to try to get too cute with the Switch 2 or, go somewhere completely different. It's like, all right, well, the Switch 1 was built around core gaming. What if we made like another thing that's like, we're back to touch screens, everybody? And it's like, no, I don't want a second screen or a stylus or anything like that. Like, just give me the Switch 2 where it's like I can play like a normal game on the go or on the TV. That is the coolest gimmick that Nintendo's ever put out because it also has the other gimmicks built in, right? It has motion controls. It has the ability to use the touchscreen if you're in handheld mode. It has like the portability. It has the rumble. Like all this, it is the ultimate realization of all the other Nintendo gimmicks that have existed. So the fact that they were so successful and they realized that that was the reason for their success means that even if it's not the most different console ever, and I know some people were disappointed that it's like, oh, it's just a better version of what I already have. It's like, yeah, that's what I wanted because the Switch 1 is freaking amazing. And I just wanted a better version of that if we're going to do like a hardware update.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, when it comes to now, this is something of where I want to get clarification on because sometimes I will get kind of like lost in the sauce of hearing all the different explanations of like key cards and like the cartridges and all this kind of stuff. It explains to me like I'm 5. Like, why are people so upset about the cartridge situation? Because I never understood this, and maybe I just didn't understand it.
So from my understanding, because I'm 100% digital at this point in terms of my games that I get, aside from like the souvenir games that I get when I go to Japan, because I always like to buy like a favorite game of mine when I go to Japan, like because the Japanese box art is always so much cooler. So with the key cards, from my understanding, is you buy the box, and when you get the card, it's basically just a download key that you are putting into your Switch 2. So this is only for certain games, but it seems like it's the majority of games. So you don't actually have the game on a cartridge. You just basically have a code that redeems when you put that cartridge in, and then it downloads to your system as if you bought it off the eShop. So people are up in arms about it because, if somebody is going to a store and buying a game because they love physical copies, that defeats the purpose of that. It's like I might as well have just bought, like I'm making this trip to Walmart or Target or wherever to get a physical copy, but really I'm just going there to get a box because at the end of the day, the result is the same, that I have a digital copy on my Switch essentially. So it's almost like if you've ever seen like those games that it's like, oh, we're putting out this game in stores, but when you open it, it's just like a redeemable code. That's what it basically, yeah, that's what people are upset about, is it's analogous to that.
That's weird. I'm sorry, but that's kind of weird. That's like
I'm
having
imagining I imagine it's because like the memory of the cartridges, like to do a higher memory cartridge costs a lot more, I would imagine. So that's why they're going that route. But like Nintendo is also starting to charge more for physical copies now. Like they've put out a thing that's, I think it's starting with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. Physical copies are going to be $10 more than the digital copies.
There are multi-billion-dollar. I'm sorry, I just had like a malfunction for a second.
Well, there are various reasons for that. Some are, international trade policies that have been put in place over the last 2 years. Some are the cost of chips and storage being driven up by the overinvestment in AI. Which is why the PlayStation 5 Pro is now $900, and that's why I would imagine the Xbox Project Helix, yeah, it's up from $700 to $900 now. And the Project Helix, the next Xbox that they've announced, is probably going to be pretty substantially expensive unless like there are some huge changes. I would also imagine that the PS7 or PS6, God, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's coming out in 2027 per the reports. That is probably going to be quite expensive unless some drastic things change here. But like, I don't know, like gaming is I'm concerned. It's starting to become even more of a luxury hobby than it already was. It was already a very expensive hobby, and now it's starting to look like, with all of these kind of like this confluence of events of, import and export policies and taxes and tariffs, and then on top of that also the price of these components being skyrocketed by AI. It's a perfect storm for this just becoming even more of an expensive hobby, unfortunately.
This is going to sound non-logical and just from a very, very emotional place, but bear with me here. How did this become an elitist hobby? Like gaming was supposed to be for everybody,
Mm.
and a certain economic bracket now will not be able to afford simple things that, let's say, a family of three, for example, they have a hard enough time as it is probably putting food on the table. They just want to be able to get a Christmas gift or a Hanukkah gift, or any kind of like small, like, oh, you got straight A's for the semester, great, let's get you a PS5 or an Xbox or like a Switch or something like that to celebrate. They might not be able to do that because of how high the prices are, whether that's tariffs, whether that's chip prices, whatever the perfect storm of ingredients is. It's frustrating to see. And then on top of it, layoffs are happening. So it's
Yeah.
like, on top of not being able to make things more cost effective for the average consumer, they are not bringing in enough of a workforce, and correct me if I'm wrong, to make something more cost effective, if I'm getting things correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it all just gets traced back to corporate greed. I mean, like, uh, whether you're talking about like the fact that studios want to charge more or publishers want to charge more for games, or it's, the AI stuff driving up the prices, that's corporate greed as well, because like, they're the driving force behind this, the executives that really want to push the AI onto people. That is, the root of that is corporate greed. So really, it comes down to that. It comes down to, these trade policies that we've discussed, and I mean, gaming has never really been cheap. It's been cheaper, but it's also, with inflation and everything, it's sometimes been more expensive if you adjust for inflation. Like I think like what was that one console, like the Commodore something or other. I don't know what console it was, but like when it came out, if you adjusted it for like modern dollars, it would have been like something like $1,100 or something. And it's like, so like gaming has been very expensive since the very beginning, but it's also like it's been ebbs and flows as well. And like Nintendo has always kind of been the marker of more affordable, like still expensive, but more affordable. Like, they've usually been the cheapest of like whatever the three major platforms were. And the Switch 2 is still that, even though it's $500. Like the Switch 2 is cheaper than the Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series X has been out since 2020, and the PlayStation 5 has been out since 2020, and it's cheaper than those, even though $500 is still a lot of money. And $70 is still a lot of money to get a game. But like it's just, we've kind of reached a point where game budgets are also kind of untenable. And everybody, I mean, Nintendo thankfully has not gotten into this trend chasing that we've seen with a lot of developers, where everybody kind of wants their live service forever game. And then, we see things like High Guard and Concord and, that game from the Imagine Dragons guy. I just saw a report this morning that that's shutting down, or at least not getting any more content after 3 weeks. And it's like, these developers put in years of their lives, and then because they don't hit whatever imaginary like metric that the higher ups paint for them, that say like, hey, we need to hit this point by this day, otherwise it's just kaput. It kind of neglects the fact, because they're all chasing Fortnite's success, right? Of like, oh, they have this game that has been out since, it's been running and it's been this wild success, and it makes, billions upon billions of dollars for Epic. But they're also forgetting that Fortnite wasn't even a success right out of the gate. It wasn't until they pivoted to Battle Royale that it became a success. So like you need to have a chance. You need to give these developers a chance to like find their stride. Like imagine if like Cyberpunk just was like, oh, we're calling it quits. Like CD Projekt Red was like, yep, sorry, Cyberpunk was a mess when we launched it. We're just going to call it quits. We would not have the amazing game that is Cyberpunk 2077 in 2026. Same thing for No Man's Sky. Like those developers were given the chance to course correct and adjust to what people were wanting. And yeah, not every game is going to be able to do that, but it's frustrating that these developers are not even getting the opportunity to try to course correct or try to attract the audience that they feel like they should.
And even when it goes back to the pricing of the PlayStation, think about it. For a good, I would say, a year or two, you couldn't even get a PlayStation because of COVID. You couldn't even get one of these consoles. So technically, in development cycle, in a selling cycle, we are a year and a half behind where we should be in terms of pricing for consoles and how they are supposed to be sold. Because $900 for a console that a kid or an adult or someone who wants their first console is going to play, in my opinion, is ridiculous. Because if you were going to spend $900 on a console, I needed to do my taxes, I needed to fix my house, I needed to get my coffee, and in all seriousness, I needed to give me a return investment on when I got it. I need those games to I needed to come with at least 2 free games if they're going to charge that much money. Like,
I mean, you get Astro's Playroom which is incredible when you get a PlayStation. But yeah, I mean, well, this is also the only generation that I can ever recall where the prices went up as the life cycles went on. Because usually, like, you know, the console will launch, say it's $500, then like after a couple of years, it'll drop to like $450 or $400, and with a pack-in game or something like that. And then like by the end of the life cycle, it'll be like $300 with a pack-in game or even 2 pack-in games or whatever. Like I think I got like an Xbox 360 Elite for like $200 less than it was when it launched, like near the end of the Xbox 360 life cycle, and it came with like Lego Indiana Jones and Kung Fu Panda or something, and it was just like, I'm not going to play these games, but like cool, it came with those games and like it's free games. But yeah, this is the only time I can ever recall the prices going up, and I think it's those aforementioned factors, the policies that have been put in place with imports and exports, and then also the AI hardware just, you know, eating up all of the resources that consoles, and thus driving up the prices of said components.
Exactly. And I think it's also something to be said for, I know that developers, without a shadow of a doubt, want their games to do well on platforms everywhere, because, you know, a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, you know, they should put it on PlayStation and Xbox and all these different kind of things. A lot of people don't realize that when you are an indie developer, for example, the affordability of being able to put your game on every single platform, it's a lot. It costs a lot of money. I remember when I originally wanted to start a game company, I have the name BIOS Interactive, and I wanted to create something that had people's mental health in mind, of where we would create games surrounding mental health. And it was one of those things of where like just starting up and understanding the cost of everything, and understanding that to be able to put accessibility into a game, to be able to put different kinds of things into a game, not just that, like even the artwork, everything, even if we wanted to do like the oh my gosh, the Feeney art, you know, like stuff like that is just placeholders. We could do that. But it's one of those things of where it's just like everything is so expensive for a developer to put into a game and make it publishable, not even just playable, but publishable. It's a nightmare, but a wonderful nightmare. And it's something of where I know they would never trade it for the world, but it's become so not just anti-consumer lately with certain companies, but anti-developer, of where, you know, you're exactly right. Like they aren't given enough of a chance to succeed. Because for example, when Cyberpunk 2077 launched, you know, for me personally, I had an amazing time with that. I maybe had like 5 bugs off the top like that I experienced. It was a wonderful game. I absolutely loved it. But there was so many parts of where it was rushed, it came out too soon, and it was something of where it had like a 10-year development cycle of where they could have let it go bake and cook a little bit longer. And then when oh my God, Phantom Liberty released, that was what should have released for Cyberpunk 2077 if they had let it cook for a little bit longer. You know what I mean?
I still need to play Phantom Liberty. I played through Cyberpunk when it first came out, and I've been meaning to go back and just do a replay with Phantom Liberty in tow, and just haven't had the chance. Maybe that's what I'll start tonight after we finish the podcast. Maybe I'll go start a new save of Cyberpunk.
It's so good. You will love it. It is probably it's more like action than Cyberpunk 2077, if that's believable at all. But it's so good. I think you will absolutely love it. But yeah, it's just very interesting to see that, we see developers over here screaming, no, we want to have union, we want to have rights, we want to be able to have like leniency and just be able to make what we want to make and push it out so that it has a chance to survive. And then corporate greed is like, but do you have the money to do this? It's kind of like El Dorado. It's kind of like, the stars are not fit for this kind of proposition, So it's a really weird dynamic going on. And I'm not sure, like, where do you even meet in the middle of all of this? And then you have games media just snacking on popcorn being like, we have our own shit to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, as bad as like game development has gotten in terms of like, layoffs and everything, like games media has been absolutely decimated over the last several years, and it's really disheartening to see. I mean, we've kind of come full circle in the conversation now from where we started. But yeah, like it is rough because like not only are, members of the media constantly looking over their shoulders of like, are we next? But also they're constantly writing stories about layoffs or studio closures or whatever. And it's just like, oh my God, just like, it just feels like a constant grind of like either worrying about you're going to be laid off or writing about layoffs. And it's disheartening to say the least.
And then on top of that, you kind of have to worry if there's going to be another Gamergate on the rise with, something else that happens. So It's one of those weird moments of where it's like you have brief respites in the calm before the storm that are like, whoa, these really powerful, uplifting moments of where everyone's writing about the pieces that they love and they enjoy. But then it's just like waiting for the other shoe to drop to a degree. And I
have that in my head at all times, really, of just like things are going really well right now. What bad is going to happen? It's like, I don't know, like what the official diagnosis is. I guess it's probably just generalized anxiety. So yeah, I mean that also comes full circle because we've talked about that as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see because it's just like, as I was, I talked about before, like I mentioned on social media, I got a freelance position working as a writer at Game Tyrant, and I'm super grateful, and I feel like it's such a humbling thing to be able to be like, wow, I have 2 freelance positions in the industry, which is very rare nowadays to get back to back. And it's one thing of where it's like people, like if you work as a freelancer in this industry, you understand completely what I'm talking about, because it's very much like anything can happen because you are not a full-time employee. They don't have to worry about like health benefits. They don't have to worry about anything. You can just be let go at any point. And that's the scary part of it all, because it's just like at any point you're just like, what's going to happen? Am I next? Like, and that was a weird thing about when it really sunk in for me was during the entire thing with Gamergate 2.0 and people getting harassed and doxxed and all that kind of stuff. I was like so nervous that was going to happen because I had a run in with them who shall not be named. So it was very interesting to say the least. But yeah, games journalism and reporting and covering of games, even when it comes to listicles, when it comes to certain things, I found that even whenever you're doing something as simple as a listicle, or even if it's something as simple as like news coverage, people are relentless a lot of the time. Some people are just like, you did that wrong. Actually. And I'm just like, can we just exist in peace? Like, can it just, like, I want to know your thoughts on this, because when we see news coverage and when we see people have no nuance in conversation, where do you think the lack of nuance comes from?
I think social media has trained us to not have nuance. Like we've seen, like somebody will try to make a nuanced argument and then they get crap from both sides because of whatever argument you're talking about, because there's kind of like this us against them mentality that develops on social media. And I think it does date back to or loop back to that kind of passing car syndrome, as I call it, where it's like you're not yelling at the person, you're yelling at their avatar or whatever. And it's like I think that social media really has like kind of pushed people to develop kind of tribalism in the way that they talk about things. And in that case, it's like, we see people do this all the time where like, oh, we agree on 99% of things, but this one thing I disagree with you on, we are going to just duke it out to the death over this one thing. It's like, I wish that we were better at finding common ground and like understanding that a nuanced argument, but that's the tricky thing, right? Is like our brains were not meant to deal with the level of information and insight into the human psyche that we get from social media. And I just don't know what the solution is aside from just like trying to, every time you read something that's going to get you upset on social media, being like, there is a human behind this post. There is there is a reason that this person is posting this. I need to try and figure out like, what are they actually trying to say, rather than like, how did it come across, and like, did I project my own thoughts onto like my own like biases onto this statement that this person made. Like, it's that old thing of like, the social media is like, oh, I love waffles, and it's like, what, you hate pancakes? And it's like, no, I was just making it, like that old like meme. And yeah, I think that it's like, people project a lot on social media, and there really is like no nuance allowed in a lot of cases, and that's really disheartening, because we do have, I mean, I think it's safe to say this is the most wide-reaching communication tool that's ever existed, social media, and it's largely used for torture and anxiety because like just the way people act on social media, it is just wild at times.
It is, yeah. Even in the music community, actually, because whenever I do metal reactions on a YouTube channel, and it's really weird to see the entitlement people have, a lot, I would say some people have over just an anonymous band, like Sleep Token, for example. They have their anonymity for a reason, and it's just like so many people are like, what do they look like? What this, what that? It's just like they stayed anonymous exactly for this reason. Like, there's so many different things in the music community of where others feel entitled to that kind of parasocial relationship, and it's weird, to be honest. That's why whenever that's why I actually don't take pictures of me outside anymore unless I'm in a very crowded area, or I wait 2 to 3 days before or after rather I've taken the picture, so there's no traceable evidence of me being there. So it's gotten to a point of where like normalcy is not even in the realm of a conversation when you have this kind of a job, because everybody, especially if you're face fronting as a content creator, or, as someone who works at a company, you have to be extra safe because people are fucking nuts. Sorry, but a lot of people get really parasocial.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankfully I haven't had to deal with that too much. Like obviously I have a lot of friends that I talk to on social media and everything, and I'm extremely grateful. Don't get me wrong, like I have my career to thank for, like social media is like the thing that got my career going. Like I met a friend through social media. We founded a website back in 2010, and before that, I started writing for smaller blogs through people that I met through social media. My first ever freelance gig was with Official Xbox Magazine, and I just randomly DM'd the then editor-in-chief of OXM, just asking if they were accepting freelance ops, and she was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, send over your pitches to here's my email." And without that, and that, like, I met the Game Informer guys through social media before I, had ever met them in real life. So like there are definitely like positives, and like I've met some incredible friends through social media that like, I consider some of my favorite people that I've ever interacted with. And there are definite positives. I don't want to sound like I'm too down on it, but there are certainly those dangers as well. And I've gotten, my share of death threats. I've gotten, all kinds of stuff, but I feel like that would happen regardless of social media.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you've had to experience that. Like, there's no person is ever deserving of that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
well, one of them was over. So I've gotten three that stand out to me. One of them is they didn't tell me what I did wrong. They just sent me a link to my Yoshi's Crafted World review, and it said, "You're going to die for this." And I was like, "Did I score it too high or too low? Like, you didn't tell me what I did wrong."
It's like,
it's
okay,
a Yoshi game. It's a cute little Yoshi game where he's made up of home crafts.
I don't under like there. Okay, this is people get weird. I'm so sorry you have to deal with that because it's just like it's right. Like
It's not fine,
while
but you
it's
know what I mean.
yeah, no, exactly. No, it's just like it's kind of like the meme of the dog like surrounded by fire. It's like I'm fine, we're good,
Yeah.
it's okay. But the last topic that I want to dive into before we leave off tonight for the podcast is the top 3 games that don't get enough attention that we want to bring to people's brains, to their frontal lobe.
Somebody asked me this on my podcast this week because I did a Q&A episode and I had no good answers. I I mean, the ones that I did shout out were it's a launch title for the Switch One called Snipper Clips, Cut It Out Together, and it's a co-op puzzle game. You can play it single player and you just bounce between the two characters, but you're like these little like geometric shapes and you have to cut each other into other shapes in order to solve puzzles. So like if like you have to make a ball sit in a certain spot, you have to cut the two characters in a way that transports the ball to that spot. And it's really really cute. It's really really clever. I don't think it got the love that it needed or it deserved when it launched on the Switch One, but that was one that immediately came to mind of like, oh yeah, that was a really really like clever and fun game. I'll always shout out Super Mario 3D World. That is a game that I think that people overlooked because it came out on the Wii U, and then nobody played it because it was on the Wii U. And then when it came to the Switch, people were like, "Oh, it's a game that already came out. I don't care about this." And it was kind of treated like, "Oh, this is just a port. It's not really," even though it had Bowser's Fury as a side dish, which Bowser's Fury is fantastic. And if you haven't played that, highly recommend that. I think that's a strong indicator of where Mario's going next as far as 3D games are concerned. But Mario 3D World is a 3D Mario game with the soul of a 2D Mario game. So I love it. And it's fun playing 4-player co-op if you want to do that. But yeah, it's just some of the most cleverly designed Mario game or Mario levels that I can recall. And it's linear, so it's not like kind of Mario Odyssey or Mario 64 in nature. It's you're going from point A to point B with like little exploration points off one way or the other. Um, um, Not in the sense of like, like you don't get like powers that allow you to access new areas or anything like that, or like you're not going to come back with your power suite. Like all the stuff that you need is typically in the level itself, but like, like kind of like in like the original Super Mario Brothers where it's like, oh, you can go down this pipe and now there's all these coins, or like you can jump on the ceiling and there's like a warp zone that you can access. It's kind of like that in terms of exploration. So it really is like kind of the soul of a 2D game, but jammed into a 3D Mario game. And plus there's co-op if you want to play that. And they added online co-op for the Switch version, which is cool. What's another underrated game? I'm like looking at like my cover story things. None of them are really like popping in terms of that. Give me some of yours, and then I will think of a third one.
Let's see. The first one I would always recommend is Cozy Grove. It's a wonderful game of where you play as this like kind of like this little kid who can see ghosts, and all the ghosts that you are trying to save in this forest are bears. And it is just this incredibly cozy, wonderful game. And you just see ghosts, and you're helping them move on, but you're giving color back to the world, because after you talk with and you solve the mystery of each ghost that's in the forest, you bring color back to the surrounding area. So I think it's a beautiful game. Yeah, it's really well done. The second one I would highly recommend, another indie game. It is Coffee Talk. Wonderful game. I know that the third one, Coffee Talk Tokyo, is going to be coming out May 21st of this year, so I'm very excited to see how that pans out. But yeah, I have like both collector's editions for the first and second game. Coffee Talk, Hibiscus and Butterfly is just as good as the first, which I don't normally see a sequel being as good as the first game. Nice. Very, very awesome. And then the other one that I would recommend, doesn't get enough love, it should, is Frambo. It's a psychological horror game that is a 2D scroll. It's a point and click where you're going through the story of Fran, who has been admitted in a mental institution back in the 1930s, 40s, I think. And back then we know that psychology wasn't as advanced as it is today with being able to diagnose certain mental illnesses, things of that nature. So during her time in the hospital, she is given medication, and she shifts between two different mental states. The mental state that the doctors are in, that's normal, and the mental state that you have to solve puzzles in, which is showing all these like different mutilated body parts and horrors and all this kind of stuff. And it's a really well done game. I think it came out 2016. So it's a little bit of an older, it's like 10 years old, but it's a really fantastic story, a fantastic game. Always recommend. Those are my top 3 that I was always recommend.
I will do. I was tempted to do Star Wars Outlaws because that is a game that did not get enough love when it came out. But the one that I will shout out is it just came to Switch too. Actually, it's called Mini Shoot Adventures, and it is basically think like a Link to the Past in terms of like top-down exploration in like kind of like a fantasy style world, but instead of like a Zelda game, it's a kind of like an exploration based bullet hell. So you're like a ship that is flying through this world. It's like really fun, like smooth, like exploration, like you're upgrading your ship as you go. All the encounters are kind of like bullet hell, but like the exploration itself is like a Link to the Past. So like it's very like Zelda inspired. It's like Zelda meets bullet hell, which is super cool and super weird. I found out about it through Giant Bomb's Dan Reichert. I was with dinner with him and a few other folks here in Minnesota, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Mini Shoot Adventure, it's incredible. You should check it out." And I looked it up, and it's on Steam, and I got it for Steam, and then I ended up writing a review for Game Informer when it first came out there, and then it came out on Switch too. Because I was like, "Why is this game not on Switch? It is so perfect for Switch. It makes too much sense." And then it finally came to Switch a couple months ago, and I cannot recommend it enough.
Very nice. That's really awesome. And I love how like even though our genres are different, they still are kind of like cozy in nature. Our choices. Yeah, I wouldn't say Frambo is like cozy, but you know, it's a 2D side scroller with really good music. So
there you go.
but yeah, I do have to say, Brian, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was wonderful having you on here again, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course, anytime. And you know, the thing is that like whenever it's so cool, like just fun in nature getting to have these kinds of conversations because things go so quickly in this industry. So it's really cool to like regroup and be like, hey, what kind of mess is it? Or what kind of joy is it this time? You know what I mean? So It was really awesome having you on. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. And if you guys like our face and what we do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May your coffee treat you well and life give you a nat 20. I will see you all in the next one. Umbasa.